Hey, and welcome to another Tech Tuesday. This is Chad from Ascension Worship. This week I'm going to show you how to set up a super simple post-fade live stream mix.
Hey, what do you say? Yes, it's that time again. It's Tech Tuesday.
So if you're like most of the churches I work with, you probably have one consistent sound person with one mixer, and you need something simple to get you a better live stream mix than just getting a board mix. Well, then this video is going to be for you today. What we're going to talk about today is a post-fade live stream mix. What that means is that it's going to follow what your board mix is for the room, but it's going to allow you to change things as necessary to get the best results online. This is great for most churches because it means you're not going to need two sound engineers, you're not going to need two mixers, you're not going to need to be taking your headphones on and off to check your front of house mix versus the live stream mix. The idea is that if you get a good mix in the room, we're going to manipulate just a few things and make it sound good online. Typically, when you send a front of house mix online, you're going to hear things like the pastor's microphone be very quiet compared to the band. This is going to allow you to fix things like that to get the best results. All right, today we're going to be using the Behringer WING, but you can use this on pretty much any digital mixer and on a lot of analog mixers if you're still mixing on analog. The first like 3/4 of this video are going to be somewhat generic for any digital mixer. The last quarter, and I'll tell you when I switch over to that, will be the next steps of things you can do if you have a Behringer WING. All right, let's get started. Today we have the Behringer WING edit app open so that we can see this a little bit better on screen. I have taken a user page and just kind of thrown a basic mix on here from a camp that we did. You can see in blue, we have a bunch of band channels with drums, bass, guitars, keys, and tracks. In green, we have 2 vocal mic channels. In red, we have a click channel and a room mic, which is very important. In yellow, we have 2 speaking microphones. I do encourage you to try to have channels that are specific for speaking and channels that are specific for singing, as you'll see in this video. And then we have our computer for ProPresenter or whatever you're running for your lyrics, background music, and then over here we have some effects, 2 reverb returns. And then finally, B16 is our bus 16. Now, this is somewhat specific to the Wing. Some of the newer mixers from Behringer and other people can give you stereo buses without having to use 2 buses. So in this instance, one bus 16, can be stereo or can be mono. You generally want your live stream to be in stereo if you can. If you're doing this on, say, an X32, you would need to have bus 15 and bus 16, so you can link them together to have left and right. But on the Wing, you only need one bus. All right, back to things that apply to pretty much everything. So we have bus 16 here. Let's go ahead and label that. So we're going to call this stream and make it red. And we're going to go ahead and set the fader to 0.0 for right now. All right, and we'll come back to some of these settings in a little bit here. But first off, if we hit the home button on the screen, it's going to look like this up here. This input page, real simple. You can just be a sneaky snake and just turn all of these on. Great. The next page down, we can set our bus mode. We're going to do a post-fade mix. And you can just hit no if it asks you that question. All right, so now every channel is turned on and going to the live stream mix, but we're not going to hear anything until we push up both the fader for the front of house mix, which you can see in blue right here at the moment, and then also if I go down here and do sends on fader for bus 16, these levels are going to work in tandem together to give you what's going to go to the live stream. What that means is that if all these faders were set to 0.0, we'd be getting essentially our main front of house mix on our live stream. But what we're going to do is we're going to turn certain groups of channels down and certain groups of channels up to kind of make up for the way things sound on a small iPhone speaker when you're not actually participating, you're just listening to the live stream, versus being in the room and participating and having bigger speakers with better bass response and dynamics that will make that okay in a live environment, but wouldn't translate well online. We're going to make some adjustments for that. With that in mind, starting with these blue and green channels here, which are our band, we are not going to set those to 0.0. Instead, we're going to set those to -5. And that's really easy to do in the app because all I have to do is command click, -5, and then we'll copy and paste. I'm just going to do this. Very fun, very exciting. How was your day today? All right. Cool. So now all of our band elements, instruments, and singing microphones are set slightly quieter than what's happening on our actual front of house mix. Then moving over here to our, in this case, 2 speaking microphones, MC1 and Headset 1, we're going to set those to +5. And what we've done is that we've taken our mix and we've turned the instruments down and the speaking microphones up. And so now when you're listening to it on your phone, those speaking mics are going to pop through a little bit more and sound a little bit more even on a phone speaker. And whereas the people in the actual house, they're not going to be affected. Cool. Okay, so moving on, let's go to these computer and aux channels. We're going to set those right in the middle at 0. And again, you can adjust all this as you go, but this is going to get you like 90% of the way there. For your effects, we have a band verb and a vocal verb. I would much prefer that we start with our effects being a little bit drier so that we can add that in later so it doesn't sound like we're in a cave. So in this instance, I'm going to set these to -10. And then we can turn those up later as we need. Also keep in mind, if you have room mics, which is what we're going to talk about next, you may or may not need quite as much of these effects because you have room mics in there as well, which you're not going to hear that necessarily in your live room. So moving on to the click and room mics. Now, you're probably saying, well, why is click even on here? Of course, we're not going to put this in this mix. Yeah, you really don't need to have this in this mix. However, that's another beautiful thing about post-fade is that if we have the click fader down in our live mix, you can see it's all the way down, but it's unmuted. Then what's going to happen, even if I put this at -5, just like the other band elements, it's not going to come through the house so long as your main fader is all the way down. So if you, for example, are running low on channels and maybe you don't use click every week, maybe sometimes you need that for a banjo or who knows what else, that channel will still work online without you having to remember to go in and turn it up in your live stream mix. So that could be a simple trick for you on that. When it comes to your room mics, this is a little bit strange, but stick with me here. We're going to set this to 0.0. We're also going to make sure, if you haven't already, that channel, so I'm going to select the room mics, make sure that is not going to any of your main mixes. So that way it can be up, you can turn it up and down on your main page, but you're not going to hear it in the speakers, but it will be coming to your live stream. The reason why I like to do this is so if I have the live stream soloed on my headphones and I'm just trying to level out those room mics and figure out exactly where they need to be, I can pop my headphones on real quick and I don't need to go and hit sense on fader. That main fader will always affect what's going to the live stream. So that's just me. That's how I like to do it. But this is now a basic starting point for your live stream mix that, assuming that you're doing a good job of mixing your front of house mix and assuming that you've done a good job of setting up the tuning for the speakers in your room, this is going to get you really, really close and give you a surprisingly good mix with very little effort involved. And the idea is that you start with the room. If you're happy with the way it sounded in the room, then between Sunday and the next Sunday, listen to it online and say, okay, I remember being very happy with the way the drums sounded, but online, I feel like there's, say, too much kick drum. Easy. Next time you hop on the board, you're just going to go to your live stream mix that we see right here, and you're just going to take that kick drum mic and just bump it down a little bit, and then listen to it again, do the same thing next week. And the idea is that you're just slightly massaging. You shouldn't see these faders all over the place. They should be very close to this, but things that are loud in the room, like a drum kit, especially if you don't have it enclosed, you're going to probably need to make some adjustments on that. Your effects, those kinds of things, you're going to make just slight adjustments until you get it to where it's good enough. And then you're going to be able to make a simple change each week as long as it sounds good in your room. All right, guys, we are at the point now where we're going to switch over to some more things specific to the Wing. So we have our mix going to our stream mix bus 16. Looking at that stream mix, there are some other cool things that we can do to get a little bit more of a dialed in sound. The first, probably most important thing is to get our volume to where we're not having to crank it up when we're listening to it on our iPhone. It's going to be loud, but it's not going to be digital distorting because we're going to use this second insert slot here to add in a Brickwall limiter. So we're picking the second insert slot because it is after the fader and the pan knob, which you'll see there's some other things we can do because of that. So I selected the second insert. I'm going to turn it on. We're going to go and pick any of these open racks. So we're going to do rack 16. For our effects type, we're going to choose the precision limiter. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time going over these settings right now. I'll link some other videos that you can get more information on. But essentially, these are the two most important controls you're going to use right here is your input gain and your output gain. And we can just turn off auto gain for right now. What you want to do is when the band is really kicking, you want to turn up your input gain until you're getting a little bit of gain reduction on your biggest hits, probably your kick and your snare. What's happening is we're shaving off those biggest transients that eat up all of our headroom and therefore pushing our volume so that the whole thing can get louder. Now, depending on how you connect this to your actual stream, if it's through something like a USB, you can leave the output gain where it is at -0.5. If you're going through something like an ATEM Mini, it's probably going to be too hot of a signal. So you can then use your output gain to pull that down so that you are getting a nice hot signal that is in the red. Red's okay in this case, as long as it doesn't hit that top red line. So once you have that all set, then you should be getting a perceivably louder mix that's also being protected from digital distortion. Now, if you are cranking the input gain and you're still not getting enough volume, you're not seeing gain reduction happening over here, that could be an indication that you have some gain structure issues. Now, obviously you'd want to get that fixed, but if we're in the heat of the moment, we can't really do that right now. A quick fix is to go to your compressor. We can turn the compressor on. We don't need to actually compress necessarily, so we'll take the threshold all the way up. And we can use the makeup gain to give ourselves up to 12 dB of more input going into our limiter. So, usually 5 is going to be plenty, and then that'll give you a little bit more level going in, and so that you can actually get that limiter moving a little bit. You can also use another insert slot. The Wing is very cool in that all the main 40 channels in your buses have 2 insert slots on them. So if you wanted to, if you had another open slot, so we're going to turn this on and go to number 15 here. You can do other things like, for example, throwing on the combinator, which is a multi-band compressor that can help to kind of control the frequencies of your sound a little bit better. Again, I'm not going to really go over that today, but it's there if you want to play with it. There's plenty of resources that you can look into that. Another cool thing you can do on the Wing, you have an EQ. Because we're using the later insert slot, we can have the EQ affect what we're doing. Now, if you've tuned your room well, you should not need to do anything super crazy on this EQ. But if you find that your limiter is kind of cranking a lot because of low end, and again, it sounds good in the room, but online it's a little bit too low end heavy, and that limiter is squashing a little bit too much. A quick and easy fix for that is to use something that's somewhat unique to the Wing, which is the Tilt EQ, which is in the buses. Tilt EQ does like an old school tone knob on a radio. It simply turns up the low end and down the top end. It's a very quick way for a volunteer to just make things a little bit, bassier or a little bit brighter. So for example, I might set that at say 2.5 to 3 dB. Make sure you turn it on. And so now we have 3 dB more of a top end shelf and then 3 dB less of the low end. You can do the EQ and do the same thing. This is just really quick and easy to work with. So I like that. And then finally, down here on your panner, now obviously you're not going to pan things left and right, but if you're sending a stereo mix in here with your room mics and with your effects and, keys, anything that you have in stereo, the Wing is very good at handling stereo. A really cool thing built into the Wing is that you have a stereo spread option. And again, because we use insert 2, this will affect the insert point without adding or subtracting output gain. It'll just do gain going into that limiter. So if you pull these down, you'll get a little bit of a wider sounding image, a little bit more professional sounding. Don't overdo it, but a little bit can just help to make it sound a little bit cooler, a little bit more processed. Or if for some reason you're having issues, you need to go mono, you can go mono. If you need to make it left and right reversed, you can do that all from this section here. Well, there you go. That's how to use a Behringer Wing and set up a super simple live stream mix. I hope that's helpful for someone out there. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And until next time, have a great week. Again, this is Chad from Ascension Worship. I hope this has been helpful for you and your team. Come back here every Tuesday for new information.